Welcome to Just Us, our new legal infotainment and variety show put on by Vincent and Desilets Just Us Law Group, LLC. I'm Lisa Vincent, and I'm joined today by my business partner, Ani Desilets. And we are celebrating 1 year this month in business. And we're really happy to be here, fulfilling part of our mission, which is to provide meaningful and affordable access to justice for people in our community. It is a tremendous privilege to be able to practice law here in the state of Connecticut. We do a lot of work for a lot of people, and this is really our first opportunity to engage with the public and share a little bit of what we do and have a little bit of a conversation about justice and about civic life. So I'd like to thank Nutmeg Television for the opportunity and thank those of you tuning in. Give us an opportunity to see if we have something to offer for you. So who are we and what are we doing here, Attorney Desilets?
So I'm Ani Desilets, and I came to the practice of law actually a little bit later in life. I was in my mid-30s. After a failed career in academic sociology, I was always interested in criminal law and justice and the Constitution, and I had a lot of student loan debt, so I figured go to law school and you'll be able to pay off your student loans. And here I am paying more student loans. But so definitely came into the practice of law as an adult with a work history and lived experience. And yeah, here I am.
I'm also, a second career lawyer. I think I graduated law school at 40. Prior to going to law school, I was a foster parent here in the state of Connecticut and really somewhat disillusioned with the system, the child protection system, and the treatment that children in foster care received. Really felt like children needed lawyers, and just kind of frustrated with what my experience was as a citizen here in the state of Connecticut. Went to Quinnipiac University School of Law as a full-time day student, which was interesting to say the least. And after graduating and passing the bar, I opened my practice there in Torrington, where I worked as a solo practice lawyer for about 10 years, which is where we met, right? Bringing in an associate. But really want to talk to people a little bit about why we opened this practice, what we're doing here, and why that makes us any different from any other lawyer in the state of Connecticut who perhaps comes from a different background. So what's your take on that?
Well, if I could just take a step back. So it's, you had come to it through personal reasons from dissatisfaction with the child welfare system and serving as a foster parent, whereas I didn't have a personal motive or a personal perceived injustice. I kind of was just really interested in the criminal law and really interested in the Constitution and defending defending the accused. And interestingly enough, I just wound up in child protection. I just wanted to say that not exclusively child protection, but a lot of it, right? Which interestingly enough, in law school and prior to that, I didn't perceive it as even real law, right? It was just more like social work in my mind. The act of protecting children and the law, that intersection, for me was more like social work than law. Which turns out I was kind of wrong and kind of right. So I think what makes us different, I mean, just on a, we we both came at this sort of as adults with different, lived experience, personal experience to sort of bring to the table, and invaluable life experience, I think, and some kind of disaffection, whether it be with the foster care system or something.
I had a lot of expectations about what the law was, what the legal system was. I think I went to law school very naive. I think my understanding of the justice system has really evolved over the past 12 years. In some ways, in a good way, in some ways, not. But I definitely have learned a lot over the past 12 years. And what I mainly get out of it is that, much as we say, the government is to be of, by, and for the people, right? And so the justice system is very much aimed at serving the public. And the people running that system are people themselves. And I think there's some disconnect between, much as I myself had a perception about what the system is, I think there's some disconnect between what people see on TV, on court TV, and in, trials that make the news as compared to what that system actually looks like for most people who find themselves dealing with a system that they're really not equipped to encounter. Very few people, plan to become involved in our Connecticut justice system. So I know for me, the reality of that is starkly different than what I expected I would find. How about for you?
Yes, yes, and yes, and I guess in law school and law school certainly prepared me for being able to digest and sort of use the law textually. But I don't know how well it prepared me for the day-to-day of practice, right? So I would say academically, probably to some degree prepared. Well, obviously to a large degree prepared academically, but there's some kind of disconnect there, and I'm not sure exactly where it is. But I would say for me, there was this expectation of what justice looked like, what a fair day in court looked like, what the practice of law, for example, for a criminal defendant of whatever level of severity, right? Whether it be shoplifting all the way up to some capital charge, right? What that looks like on television, or what you expect you're going to do. You're going to fight for that underdog. You're going to give them a trial. You're going to win. You're going to prove that they were really innocent. Versus what it actually is and where the wins actually are, right? So
I thought, for our first show here, in terms of introducing people to what we do and how the system actually works. Right now in Connecticut, we have the Fotis Dulos trial going on out of Stamford, which is, the type of criminal case that people often think about when they think about the justice system, and a very public trial. I know I have been following the trial a little bit, and I'm sure a lot of our viewers are keenly interested in the trial right now for Michelle Troconis, who was the girlfriend of Mr. Dulos, who of course committed suicide prior to any type of trial. Have you been following that trial at all?
I will. I have been following it, when you get home from work and you just have that 10 minutes. But there's ways to watch it in full, and I would prefer to watch it in full. I think YouTube airs it under Crime and Punishment. There's a few stations where you can watch it. I have watched some motion arguments and whatnot, and I've definitely caught snippets, but not too closely. Not as closely as I followed, say, the Johnny Depp trial that was just on, and Amber Heard.
So, people are very familiar with to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. And the fact and concept that you're innocent until you're proven guilty. I think the concept, people are very familiar with the notion that, you're entitled to have a trial in front of a jury of your peers. People get jury notices in the mail. They're called to serve as jurors in one form or another. I know my mother served on a jury and thought that was really one of the...
I always wanted to. I don't get selected. I don't get selected.
Oh man, no jury trial for you.
No.
No. My mother thought it was one of the more positive experiences in her life. She actually got a lot out of sitting on a civil jury trial.
How long was it? A long, long one?
She sat for a couple of weeks, went through the selection process, and really got a lot out of it, I think. I think for the people sitting on the jury right now in Stanford, watching the evidence, surrounding the murder of this mother, that is probably a profound life experience for them. I imagine the same is true for the attorneys trying the case, right?
Yes.
A lot of emotion and a lot of passion poured into that.
Preparation, the amount of preparation, the amount of work,
Yeah. So, what is your take on the process as it stands right now? What do you think people are paying attention to as they watch this unfold?
I mean, one of the things that's striking me, as I'm only catching snippets of it, I'm definitely not devoting the time I probably would like to, is the evidence that's been kept, close to the prosecution's chest. They were quiet, I think, a lot leading up to the trial. What exactly was being discarded when we were going through Hartford and stopping at all the garbage cans. What's been interesting to me is some of the forensic evidence that's come out: ripped clothing, bloodstained clothing. It's for certain. The alleged victims, I find that actually offensive that we're calling her an alleged victim, and that was all discussed in a pretrial motion, whether or not to call her a victim or an alleged victim, but the actual amount of forensic evidence that there is and that the prosecution has not talked about. I really wish that I could just kind of take a month off and actually watch it from start to finish, all the arguments, all the motions. I think the first day of trial, there had to be like 30 motions just that day that the judge had to go. Not today. This is not an issue today, just one by one. And, for not, people who don't practice law watching it, I can't imagine what they're thinking. But I'm thinking each of those motions had to take, X amount of time to prepare and all those motions. And it's a lot of work.
Definitely a lot of work. And I think, I try to remind myself regularly, and I know, every day we're talking to clients, right? And so people's lives are impacted by this. The family of the victim are present there in Stanford at the courthouse. They're watching this. They've waited a long time for this, which for them is their hope for justice right now. It's hard to imagine how it feels as a family member to watch some of what has happened with the jury. We rely on members of the public to listen to and weigh the evidence and to treat this in a very serious manner, and pronounce ultimately guilt or innocence for the person who's accused of this crime. And, there's been what I would call some misconduct by some of the jurors on the case. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I see they're dropping by flies, or at least the alternates are. Luckily, none of the main jurors. But I don't know if they just don't want to be on the jury, or, it brings back the issue, and I'm not sure if is it Schoenhorn? I don't want to mispronounce it. Schoenhorn. If he filed a motion for sequestration, it was denied, or a change of venue, I mean, you got to imagine anyone living in the Stanford areas, or Stanford all the way. You have to imagine they're affected by this and have opinions. I mean, I don't know how. I don't know if Troconis can get a fair trial out of that area, but uh, the other interesting thing here too is we don't hear about this in a lot of criminal cases in Connecticut, right? This is the first one where they're allowing camera access. The first one that I know about, at least in modern history, where they're allowing full open access into the criminal courtroom, such that it's being taped. I mean, you think back of the Cheshire case, where they weren't allowing cameras in the courtroom, and I know public interest was there, but they weren't allowing it. And I actually don't know. I'd be interested to know what the reasoning was why we're allowing it this time. But yeah, I don't know. I definitely heard that one was making reference to the movie and book Gone Girl. It makes you wonder, and now there's been more. It makes you wonder if they actually just want to get off because it's expected to go on. I think for 3 months they're estimating 2-3 months.
It's an extended period of time.
Yeah.
And I think there's a concession that many people who were selected for the jury had heard about the case. They had prior knowledge of the case, and of course, Gone Girl was a theory that had been put forward by the attorney that had been representing Mr. Doulos.
Yeah, that was Attorney Patterson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's part of our system, right, is that every person is entitled to have an attorney to provide them a zealous defense. So that's another aspect that some people understand, some people don't. But we need competent attorneys to be willing to stand in court and provide a meaningful defense for people accused of crimes. Otherwise, the system falls apart.
That's true. However, when that reference was made by Attorney Pattis, it was outside in front of the news cameras. But your point is taken. We need zealous advocates for clients, for sure.
Yeah. But that doesn't alter the perspective of the victims.
Sure.
And her family members that are sitting in that courtroom
Yeah, I can
right now, really, looking at evidence that they probably would not like to see. So I do think it's good for cameras to be in the courtroom. I think that people deserve to see what goes on in our justice system, how the system actually works. And I don't know how many people know that every single courtroom in our state, every criminal court across the state is open to the public. People don't need to have a cause to go into a courtroom to sit and watch a criminal case.
If you're ever bored and you're looking for something to do, head on over to the actually the family court too.
Well, we've done it.
Yeah. For Alex Jones, right?
Yes,
yeah.
We went and watched the Alex Jones trials. Attorneys are not immune to wanting to see how the system works, and some of our field trips out to see public trials have been pretty enjoyable. I mean, we learn from it, right?
Yeah, I want to get to this trial at least one day. I think we talked about trying to get there at least one day. It's different too. It's so different when you see it when you're watching it on camera versus being there. I think the perspective of just how large the courtroom really isn't once you're there, right? It's like this monolith on TV, like they're like actors almost. And then when you're there in person, it's really just quite a lot smaller, and even the people are just smaller.
Yeah, I mean, the concept that really we're all just people at
Right.
the end of the day. All of the actors, all of the victims, all of the accused are all the same. We're all just people. And I think that really was part of what we were looking at when we said and decided to call ourselves Just Us, right? We're just us. We're just two people who happen to have law degrees and have chosen this as a profession. And I think it's helpful. I think it's part of coming into the law later in life that allows us to genuinely acknowledge that the people who come into this arena for one reason or another are just people. And everybody deserves to be treated in a respectful way and hopefully understand the process that they're going through. There's a lot of differences, which is really what we're going to get to, right? Because for this trial, what do we have? We have, Michelle Troconis, who's been at liberty leading up to her trial.
She's still out on she's out on bond, right?
Yeah, she's not incarcerated at this time. So, she has had the benefit of innocent until proven guilty. She has a lot riding on this, as do the family of the victim. But that's not the standard that we work with a lot, right? Guilty beyond a reasonable doubt?
No.
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 The other thing people are very familiar, people hear about the rules of evidence, right? And actually that's controlling a lot of what's happening in terms of even what words can be used, right? During the presentation of evidence, we try to keep the trial fair. There's rules that apply to evidence. You can't just bring in whatever you would like to have. And those rules, lawyers study, right? We all took a class in evidence, but every day we have to practice evidence, right?
True. But I just think this alleged victim versus victim is just a bit perhaps more nuanced than it has to be. She's a victim.
She's a victim, and I think they actually just declared her deceased recently.
Yeah, I was wondering, because it's been so many years. Yeah, right, but in court, she's only allowed to be the alleged victim.
Right, right. So, realistically, I don't know how much people gather from just watching the trial about the rules of evidence, the innocence until proven guilty, but I definitely know people understand that people are innocent until they're proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And I think that our system intends on that because it is better to see a guilty person walk free than it is to see one innocent person confined for a crime that they didn't actually commit. Which I'm sure people are familiar with, the work of the Innocence Project and other things, and you and I have had many conversations about people.
Interestingly enough, did you hear that the Innocence Project is taking up the gentleman who's been serving out? He's almost 50 years old. Is it Scott Peterson? One of the Innocence Projects is taking up his case that they have newly discovered evidence or something.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
He was convicted for killing his pregnant wife, remember?
Yes.
And he was he's on death row, I believe.
I believe you may be right.
Yeah, so the Innocence Project shockingly just took up his case.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. I know here in Connecticut we have had, innocent people serve time in jail for crimes that they didn't commit.
Sure.
So there's all types of consequences to people when they become involved in the system, no matter when or how they get into it. People have a lot riding on it. And so as we wrap up our first episode here of Just Us, and we try to educate people, what do you think the most important things are for people to learn about or know about our system or how it works?
Television is not the place to learn it. That I would say. And not everything is as it appears. And a lot of it would be unlearning.
Unlearning
2020, unlearning Dateline, unlearning all these things, these shows that are wrapped up within an hour that would have you believing someone's guilty or even innocent. It would be an unlearning process and a relearning.
Yeah, I think we've had, every day when we go to court or meet a new client, we will say our understanding of the system and the processes is much different now than when we came into it. It is not what we thought it was as people going to law school to practice law. I think there's many people who don't want to unlearn. They're very vested in, following true crime stories and watching court TV and other things. But people who are genuinely interested in the law, genuinely interested in civics or government or politics, I think would be well served to do some unlearning. Well, other than watching TV, what are the options?
I mean, if you want to learn about the court system, I think the idea of just going there and sitting and watching it, I guarantee it'll be very different from what you see on actual television or what you think exists. I had a client, object and say, that was hearsay what she just said. How could that come in? And it's like, because it can.
Because
it can. And I can't explain that to you right now, but because it can.
Right. Well, criminal law, we do a little bit of criminal law here and there, but really the bulk of our work is in other courts, which we're gonna talk a lot about over our upcoming episodes. We really have an opportunity, I think, to bring information to people to the best of our ability to help people understand what actually goes on within our courts here in Connecticut, particularly as it relates to children, but also in the other courts where we practice. So we appreciate everybody who has tuned in today. Very pleased to be bringing Just Us to our Nutmeg TV television network, and hoping that this is just the first of many conversations that we'll have with the goal of keeping you informed and educated about our legal system.
Sometimes life just happens. Don't worry. Farmington Motorsports will get you back on the road and at a fair price. From towing to tires, emissions to transmissions.
Our ASC certified techs do it all.
Farmington Motorsports is a family-run business. We're a Napa Auto Center and AAA approved. We work on all makes and models from preventative maintenance to major repairs.
And every repair is backed by our 2-year, 24,000-mile nationwide warranty.
When life happens to you, don't worry. Farmington Motorsports.
I'm your host, Kurt Barwis. Today, I have a very special guest, Dr. Andrew Lim.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Veterans Corner. My name's Chuck Wooden.
Decision for ourselves for this week if we want to be made well.
Hi, welcome to the crack of dawn. It's Dawn Lombardi. I'm starting the painting. It's going to be the clips with some water. Love it.
He took me on the sets of Lost in Space, Batman.
Everybody has a story. What's yours? Until next time.